Throughout history, nations, leaders, and individuals have risen to greatness not because they had all the resources, but because they created an image of strength that others believed in. Think about it. Long before armies march or industries dominate, it is the perception of power that bends the course of negotiations, shapes alliances, and alters the behavior of rivals. The mind believes what it consistently sees and hears, and once that perception takes root, it becomes a form of leverage more valuable than sheer numbers or raw material. On the global stage, perception acts as the first battlefield. A country may have developing technology, growing industries, or evolving capabilities, but if it can project confidence, innovation, and determination, others are forced to take notice. That projection influences how the world treats them. It changes conversations from dismissive to cautious, from patronizing to respectful. Suddenly, even a modest advance can appear monumental because it signals a direction, a momentum that cannot be ignored. Look at the way emerging powers transform their image. They showcase innovation, they broadcast achievements, and they celebrate every step forward as a breakthrough. The rest of the world doesn't always see the internal struggles or the incomplete systems. They see the bold announcements, the powerful demonstrations, the unwavering confidence that creates an aura of inevitability. People start to believe that success isn't just possible, it's already happening. And when others believe, that belief becomes fuel for reality. This principle applies to individuals just as much as nations. A person who walks into a room with certainty, with conviction, changes the energy of everyone present. They may not yet have mastered every skill, they may not yet have achieved every milestone, but the way they present themselves creates an impression that shapes how others treat them. Opportunities often flow not to the most prepared, but to the most perceived as prepared. Respect is given not only to those who have arrived, but to those who make others believe they will. Perception, however, cannot remain hollow. It must be backed by effort, strategy, and eventual results. Projection without progress collapses under scrutiny. But when ambition and action align with a strong narrative, perception accelerates the journey to reality. It opens doors, creates pressure, and forces the world to adjust to a new balance of power. The greatest shifts in history began with a shift in how people saw themselves and how they were seen by others. First comes the belief, then comes the demonstration, and finally, the transformation. What begins as an impression turns into recognition, and recognition fuels influence. This is how the impossible gradually becomes undeniable. The story of progress has always been about those who dared to create something new instead of relying on what already existed. Every nation that rose from the shadows of dependency to the spotlight of leadership did so by building its own tools, shaping its own ideas, and breaking free from the need to borrow strength from others. True freedom is not just political. It's technological, it's economic, it's the ability to stand tall because you no longer wait for permission or assistance to act. When a society relies solely on external powers for its growth, it remains vulnerable. The strings of dependence are invisible, but they pull tightly. Prices are dictated by someone else. Decisions are influenced by outside agendas, and the sense of dignity is always compromised. History shows us that those who remain dependent rarely set the course of the future. They simply follow the path others lay out for them. But when a breakthrough happens, when innovation becomes the driving force, everything changes. Suddenly, the balance of power tilts. What once was imported begins to be exported. What once was borrowed begins to be owned. That shift is not just about machines or inventions, it's about self-belief. It's about a culture that says, we will design, we will build, and we will set our own pace. Nations that once bowed to technological giants eventually become giants themselves. They do it not by copying, but by creating. not by staying comfortable, but by daring to challenge. Each invention becomes more than a tool, it becomes a declaration. We can no longer be controlled because we no longer need what you provide. That is how a country moves from being seen as a market to being seen as a competitor, and eventually a leader. The same truth applies to individuals. A person who always waits for others to provide solutions remains stuck in the cycle of dependence. But the moment they begin innovating in their own life, thinking differently, finding fresh approaches, challenging routines, they step into a level of freedom most never reach. They are no longer bound by someone else's system. They create their own. That's where personal power begins to multiply. The beauty of innovation is that it doesn't just change circumstances. It inspires others to think bigger. One breakthrough sparks another. One act of courage ignites a movement. Over time, what was once seen as impossible becomes normal, and what was once normal becomes obsolete. Entire generations benefit when someone refuses to accept dependence as destiny. The world has always respected creators more than consumers, leaders more than followers. And the truth is this: once you show the ability to create, the world cannot ignore you. Innovation forces recognition. It forces respect. And most importantly, it forces change. History teaches us that respect is rarely handed out freely. It is claimed, demanded, and often won in moments when the world least expects it. The greatest shifts in power and influence come not from slow, predictable steps, but from bold moves that catch others off guard. The element of surprise has always been one of the most powerful forces in human progress. It disrupts assumptions, challenges comfort zones, and forces even the strongest to reevaluate their stance. Think of the turning points in the rise of nations. The world often underestimates emerging powers, assuming they will remain dependent or stagnant. But then, suddenly, a new breakthrough is unveiled. A remarkable achievement emerges, and everything changes overnight. What was once dismissed as weakness is now acknowledged as potential. What was once ignored becomes impossible to overlook. In that moment of surprise, perception transforms into respect. This dynamic plays out not only on the global stage but also in personal life. People make silent judgments, form quiet expectations, and often underestimate what others are capable of. But when someone reveals a strength that no one saw coming, the entire narrative changes. The doubters fall silent, the critics recalibrate, and the onlookers begin to admire. It is in the unexpected act of strength, resilience, or brilliance that true respect is carved out. Surprise has a way of resetting the rules. It's not about being reckless. It's about being strategic. It's about keeping your vision hidden long enough that when you reveal it, the impact is undeniable. A single demonstration of capability can outweigh years of being overlooked. A single bold act can rewrite the story that others have been telling about you. And once the story changes, so does the power dynamic. At the heart of this lies courage. To create surprise, one must be willing to act differently from the crowd, to invest in preparation that others don't see, and to unveil progress at the precise moment it carries the most weight. This is not just about strategy. It's about confidence. It's about daring to believe in your own strength before anyone else does, and then letting the world catch up to that belief. Nations do it with innovation, individuals do it with resilience, and leaders do it with vision. The greatest transformations always carry an element of shock because they defy expectation. And once expectation is shattered, respect becomes unavoidable. People may resist, they may criticize, but they cannot deny what stands before them. The world rarely remembers those who stayed predictable. It remembers the moments when something unexpected redefined what was possible. That is when attention turns into admiration, and admiration turns into influence. The lesson is clear. Those who dare to surprise the world earn the kind of respect that cannot be taken back. Throughout history, the tools of war have never been just about steel, firepower, or engineering. Behind every creation lies an idea, a vision, and a purpose. When a nation develops something powerful, it is not only shaping a machine, it is shaping identity, pride, and influence. What the world often sees as hardware is, in reality, a symbol of intent. It tells allies, rivals, and future generations who you are and what you stand for. A fighter jet is not merely wings and engines. It is the embodiment of years of research, sacrifice, and determination. A missile is not just fuel and metal. It carries within it the spirit of independence, the refusal to be dominated, and the ambition to protect one's sovereignty. Each of these creations speaks a language far louder than words. It tells the world we are capable, we are determined, and we are not to be underestimated. Weapons shape psychology long before they are ever used. Their very existence changes how the global stage operates. Negotiations shift, strategies evolve, and respect recalibrates. A demonstration of strength can prevent conflict more effectively than 1,000 speeches. Because when others know you have invested your sweat, intelligence, and resources into building your own power, they think twice before trying to impose theirs. But beyond strategy, these creations touch something deeper. They inspire citizens. They make ordinary people feel proud of their homeland, knowing that their nation has stepped into a new level of self-reliance and achievement. Children grow up believing that greatness is possible, that innovation is part of their heritage, and that they are heirs to a future of strength rather than subjugation. This is why breakthroughs in defense are celebrated not just as military wins, but as cultural milestones. At the same time, there is a universal principle hidden here. In life, the tools we build, whether literal or symbolic, are never just functional. They represent our discipline, our resilience, and our vision. A business is not just a company. It's someone's dream made real. A book is not just pages. It's a voice preserved for generations. A personal achievement is not just a result. It's a declaration of one's worth and potential. That's why the greatest leaders, nations, and individuals understand this truth. Every creation carries meaning beyond its material form. It's not just about the function. It's about the message. It's not just about what it does. It's about what it represents. When the world sees strength forged with intention, it cannot dismiss it as mere machinery. It recognizes the story behind it, the determination within it, and the future it signals. That story is what commands attention, earns respect, and reshapes destiny. In the arena of power, whether between nations, companies, or individuals, predictability rarely inspires admiration. What shakes the foundations of the status quo is the element of surprise. When the unexpected happens, when someone delivers beyond imagination, it forces the world to stop, pay attention, and recalibrate its judgments. That sudden jolt is often the gateway to respect, and once respect is secured, it becomes a tool of influence that shifts outcomes. Think about history's pivotal moments. The world tends to underestimate rising forces until they reveal something extraordinary. That revelation, whether a breakthrough in technology, a bold act of courage, or an unforeseen display of strength, disrupts the assumptions that held others comfortable. Rivals who once dismissed or mocked suddenly tread carefully. Allies who once doubted begin to trust more deeply. Respect grows not in gradual whispers, but in powerful jolts that change the way people see you forever. This isn't about arrogance or intimidation. It's about awakening recognition. Respect cannot be begged for, nor can it be demanded without substance. It must be earned, and often the most effective way to earn it is by doing what others thought you could not. The shock of achievement carries a psychological weight. It changes how conversations are held, how negotiations unfold, and how opportunities are presented. On a global stage, a single unexpected demonstration of capability can alter decades of power balance. It tells the world, we are not who you assumed we were. That one moment can tilt treaties, shift markets, and command leverage in ways that speeches or promises never could. Because when the world is forced to recognize your strength, it adjusts its behavior accordingly. Respect is no longer optional. It becomes instinctive. This principle is equally alive in personal life. When someone surpasses expectations, when they rise above challenges that others thought would break them, they inspire a newfound level of admiration. Colleagues, friends, and even competitors begin to look differently at them. That shift opens doors that were once closed. Suddenly, influence expands because others have no choice but to acknowledge a new standard of excellence. But here's the deeper truth. Leverage comes not just from being respected, but from the fact that others now factor you into their plans. They cannot ignore you, bypass you, or dismiss you. They must consider your presence, your perspective, and your potential. That is where influence truly begins, not in chasing approval, but in commanding attention through undeniable impact. The greatest power shifts in the world don't begin with gradual acceptance. They begin with seismic shocks that awaken respect. And from that respect flows a new kind of leverage, the ability to shape conversations, redirect outcomes, and redefine possibilities. Every era is defined by those who refuse to wait for perfect conditions. Progress is never delivered to the cautious or the hesitant. It is seized by those willing to take risks, embrace uncertainty, and step forward even when the path is unclear. History honors those who had the courage to act before others believed it was possible. Greatness has never been about playing it safe. Playing safe maintains the present. Boldness creates the future. The leaders who shape civilizations, the nations that redefine global order, and the individuals who inspire generations all share a common thread. They dared to attempt what others only spoke about. They did not wait for permission. They did not wait for consensus. They acted with conviction, and the world adjusted around them. There's a profound truth here. Hesitation protects comfort, but boldness builds legacies. Every invention we take for granted today once seemed like madness. Every revolution in thought, technology, or freedom began with people who were told they were unrealistic. Yet it was precisely their willingness to ignore limits and push boundaries that allowed humanity to advance. Nations rise in the same way. The world respects those who are unafraid to declare big ambitions and pursue them relentlessly. When a country invests in innovation, when it asserts its sovereignty, when it shows strength even in the face of doubt, it signals to the world that it is ready to claim its place. That boldness is what transforms underdogs into leaders and challengers into champions. On a personal level, boldness separates those who live small lives from those who create meaningful impact. Most people spend their lives waiting for the right moment, the right support, the right resources. But the truth is, the right moment is never given, it is created. Every person who has ever achieved greatness started without guarantees. They stepped forward while uncertainty still existed, and in doing so, they discovered strengths they never knew they had. Courage has a compounding effect. One bold step opens the door for another. One act of fearlessness sparks confidence that builds momentum. Over time, this momentum becomes unstoppable, and what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. The bold redefine not only their own lives, but also the lives of those around them. They prove that it is possible, and in doing so, they make it easier for others to follow. The lesson is timeless. Progress rewards audacity. Respect flows toward those who dare. Influence gravitates toward those who act. And the greatest prizes, whether in leadership, innovation, or personal transformation, are claimed not by the hesitant, but by those with the vision and courage to move first.